okay? And I did that in the 60s and 70s. My parents dressed me like Buck, I was a boy. You know, I didn't have any problems because I just lived, we used to call it a tomboy, right? So that was totally, and I went through puberty. And
oh my God, they're saying the quiet part out loud. That used to be called a tomboy. You're admitting now that if you're a tomboy, people are gonna be like, oh, is your daughter trans? Why is being a tomboy now this like outdated thing?
I did all the things. I do not believe children can make those choices, and I do not believe it's okay and ethical for a parent to make those choices for a child. But I do believe gender dysphoria exists in children. I had it, 100% it's there. But to give medication to a child is so unethical to me that you would actually, exactly what you said, you're stunting brain growth, you're stunting all of these things.
I appreciate the fact that Buck is talking about this and is actually using the term gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is something that does exist. It is something that psychologists have known about for a very long time. It was a very limited number of people, but it was a mental condition. It is real. It exists. We don't need to debate that. We can debate the extent to which it exists. That's a real thing. But so often now people aren't using gender dysphoria. That's like an outdated term because now this is not something that needs to be fixed. It just needs to be affirmed. If you don't have gender dysphoria, you believe that you are biologically a man.
Transitioning medically for children is not okay for me, but I do believe in a social space.
When you say a social transition, it's interesting to me because we can't control what happens in a social transition.
That's right.
So to me, and we talk about suicide rates among young trans people, this whole ideology is telling people to derive their value off of what somebody else is saying about them or what somebody else affirms to them. So we say that, you know, society is the problem and we're not allowing people to be who they are and that's why they're committing suicide, but maybe it has to do with the messaging that we're sending to these kids, that you derive your value from if somebody uses your correct pronoun, or you derive your value if you can...
That's so good! That's so good! I mean, that goes back to everything of like raising kids to be perpetual victims, to be constantly focused about what other people think. I've talked about this in the context of homeschooling, but I'm so grateful that I was homeschooled because I did not care what other people think. I was not in like the fifth grade soup, you know, where everybody was dealing with peer pressure and there were all these kids. I was trying to be like them. That just wasn't part of my world. I was just Brett. I just did what I was interested in. I was just me. And then when I got older and, you know, I went into the real world, I wasn't feeling any of that pressure because I didn't derive my worth from other people because I was not around that when I was younger. I obviously had friends, but I was not in that contained environment 6 hours a day dealing with those social pressures. It was just me.
If this person accepts you for wearing a dress, be who you are, but tell them to be empowered about it and not get that empowerment from somebody else.
I feel like that's really kind of inconsiderate to say that someone would take their life because what someone else says. To somebody, that is important. To somebody, I know have friends who their family does not use the correct pronouns when they've transitioned and they live in the same household. This person struggles with depression and anxiety. Could you imagine living in an environment like that where you're no longer validated? That's coming from your own parents.
But if you base your validation off of other people, this is a hard truth, but if your sole validation...
No, you definitely have to do it. Listen,
I
could give
people,
everyone thinks about me. I do what I want. But for everyone, that's not the case because everybody has different personalities.
Well, the exception cannot be the rule. If you want to create a strong society that is empowered, that is productive, that doesn't give a crap about what other people think, then this is the harsh, real truth. You should not walk around being mentally ill or struggling because of the things that other people say about you. When you acknowledge, it's a really hard thing to acknowledge, like I will not say that this is something easy, like he is saying, it is a hard truth. When you acknowledge that not everybody is going to like you in the world, and that you cannot please everybody, it's literally the most freeing thing. It's the reason why I'm able to do this show, knowing that there are many people that disagree with me, that there are people in my family that very much disagree with things that I'm saying, that I have friends that I grew up with that don't like me anymore because of this. But I don't care because I've met incredible people who do. And I know that I'm being true to myself, and I'm being genuine, and I'm empowered in what I'm saying. It's not an easy thing to do, but mentally you will be better off, you will be stronger if you reach that point. And obviously, that is not the easiest thing to do. I remember being like a late teen, still acting in probably my like most awkward phase, and I just felt very out of place because I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep acting. I felt like people didn't like me. I don't know, I was kind of questioning my political beliefs. Like it wasn't a fun time, but like reaffirming this and saying, no, I'm gonna stay true to who I am, I don't care what other people think. It's so freeing. And it's up to you to decide to make that change, to change your mindset. Nobody else can do that for you.
Right, but that doesn't make it any. That doesn't mean that.
But it's
we
still.
should
But
be
what you're not
telling people to get
acknowledging. What you're not
validation from
acknowledging though
others.
is that in that environment it is not supported.
I'm acknowledging that. I'm
Okay.
just saying that we're saying that for some reason they should look for that validation from somebody
When
else
you
rather
love
than find it
somebody and you have a
within.
family, you want them to
But you're
validate you.
focusing not on the individual, you're focusing on the people outside of that
Yeah, but the
individual.
individual.
I'm focusing on empowering that individual.
But part of being a
You're-
person is needing to be validated. You don't need to be validated ever in your life from your
No.
family or your friends.
I get my
Never.
validation from within, and then the
Right,
There's
but
no-
if we're talking about children, okay, if we're talking,
child.
okay, I was an 8-year-old when I found out that I wasn't biologically male, right? I was 8 when I found out that I wasn't the same as my brothers, okay? And so going through that.
That's the problem with your parents. You got to take that up with them. I don't know what was going on or why you thought that you were a boy. I don't even know where this is going. That should not even be part of this argument that you at 8 years old couldn't figure that out. And that your parents were so disconnected that they did not tell you.
Through that process, I attempted suicide 4 times because my mother was like, well, you are a girl. When you're 8.
Okay, well, that's her fault for not acknowledging that earlier on. And if an 8-year-old is attempting suicide, that's a much bigger deal. I would think that that is a bigger deal than just your mom saying, hey, you're a girl. I'm guessing that there's something mentally under there that we need to address that maybe you're not mentioning here.
And you're 12 and you don't have anyone else that is in your space, when you don't have anyone else that lives in the same house as you to tell you you're okay, where are you supposed to go? How are you supposed to garner your own self-validation if the people that are raising you don't validate who you are?
As a father, you know, my duty is to raise my children the way I believe is right. And if my child...
Also, before Brandon gets into this, validation is not the same as love and care. Very often, they should not be synonymous and they're very different things. This person is saying, oh, I need to be validated, you need to be validated, these people need to support you. You can still love somebody and want the best for them, but you have a different idea of what is best for them, but you're still loving them, you're still there. If this person's mother was abusive, that would be a totally different conversation, but they haven't said that she was abusive. It's just that she didn't affirm that she was a boy.
I'm going to let it play out the way I believe it should be played out. And at 18 years old, you can do whatever you want to do. If you don't want to wear dresses, that's fine. I mean, just wearing it, if you want to dress like a boy, don't make you want to be a boy. Don't mean you have to be a boy. My mom was a tomboy, and my mom had me and my brother, and she's a woman, you know, and she lives like that. But, you know, you may want to dress a little different. Maybe a boy want to do cheerleading or something like that.
Right.
But that don't mean you need to transition to something else. So I want that to play out until my child is old enough to make that decision on their own. Also, you have to teach your children to have balance, because if you just want mommy and daddy to acquiesce to everything you want, that's not reality. You have to understand that mom and dad may not see me this way. They love me. I
Yes.
see myself this way, and I disagree with how they speak to me or how they're, but I love them as well.
He is such an important voice. Like, seriously, guys, if you have not listened to him, please do, because he is so balanced yet firm in his belief, which I think you saw that play out there, where he does not compromise, but he is kind. And I think that that's just, he's very, very effective. And when you see him debate other cops and debate, like, with the Black Lives Matter movement, oh God, he's so good. He's incredible. This was a fascinating debate. It actually was less spicy than I was expecting it to be. I think that one person...
Apoteket finns här för dig. Och alla du tycker om. Välkommen till hela Sveriges apoteket.se.
Photograph everything in the bottom tier so the workers with heat
Why is the FBI here?
for taking us not going down low.
Don't answer it! This whole thing is exploding. Did the White House know? Couple more minutes and I'll...
Nixon is a man who values light.
Index threshold
Damn right he does.
Select.
We've been told that nobody's been left alive inside of the city walls.
Maranthian is just a shell now. No one lives.
Yeah, that's looking pretty empty to me. All I saw in there were Darkspawn.
You're very good at saving people from certain death, aren't you?
So yeah, we get back to the keep and everyone's stoked that we made it back and definitely aren't willing to talk about our war crimes. I'll touch on what would have happened if I had defended Amaranthine in a bit. So this is it, the big defense. I actually generally like this mission quite a bit, barring some jank which happens towards the end. But basically throughout the DLC, I've been completing these little quests to fortify the keep, get experimental explosives created, outfit soldiers with good weapons and armor, and so on. And that all pays off here. Basically, the more that you sink into the side stuff, the better prepared you'll be for this battle. I'm unsure what it all affects, but I do know that I had access to an archer who could smack people for 300 damage every here and there when I pointed out a target, and an explosive bombardment option. The only thing that I didn't really care for was the fact that I had these 3 separate forces. One of them seemed to be some poor fucking infantry. Another seemed to be some peasant archers. And the last one is described as an elite unit of knights who have trained their entire lives. Yeah, I'm just gonna use those and only those. And sure enough, none of them die the entire time. So there was really no reason for these other 2 options to exist. I guess unless I wanted archers, I don't know. I just think this whole system was done better during the Siege of Denerim. But either way, I overall enjoyed myself, and I love the idea of a lot of my little actions coming together at the end of the game to really pay off in some way or another.
You must succeed!
We've won.
Yeah, I think the code gave up on the game at the very end here. Our final task is to chase down the Darkspawn who have retreated back to their lair. I have a lot to say about the plot progression here, but I'm gonna hold off until we get to the end of this thing. So we head off to the Dragonbone Wastes. There's a dragon there to my surprise. We scoop out its kneecaps and continue on to the next area where we encounter the Architect once again. This time, instead of putting us to sleep and sicking experiments and dragons on us, he chats with us. What he says is that he was going to explain everything before he got interrupted last time. But what really happened was that we broke out of his fucking prison and he was like, oh shit, I guess I can't get away with that. So this guy was the first of the intelligent Darkspawn. He doesn't know why or how, he just is. His goal is to basically end the Blights by stopping them from happening. He wants to create a free-thinking and intelligent Darkspawn, a race that doesn't decide to lose its shit because it's compelled to follow awakened old gods. This is probably one of the most ambiguous decisions in this game, because this guy is a crafty fuck who tried to negotiate by force, and is only now offering an olive branch while pretending like he didn't throw us into a fucking cell. But his goal, if he's telling the truth, is a good one. I mean, yeah, intelligent Darkspawn is its own issue, but at least they wouldn't be organized against all other races everywhere. What the Architect needs to continue his awakening process is Warden blood, which is used a lot like how Darkspawn blood is used in the Joining. The Mother is a failed experiment of his, one that went crazy along with a few other key figures which he tried to awaken. She started rallying against him shortly after he granted her freedom, and he's been dealing with it ever since. So now we have to decide if we're mowing the Architect down along with the Mother, or if we're going to help this guy. While I personally think that it's probably overall safer to not let this mad scientist continue on with his rampant experimentation, and that it would be impossible to convince everyone else that all Darkspawn aren't bad now, I do like the idea of seeing what would happen if the Architect was allowed to live. So I do decide to team up with him here. Now all that's left is to take on the Mother, which we can get some help with by filling out these 3 crystal circles with crystals. I was hoping for a cool weapon or something, but I guess this works. So we stride up to the Mother, who's still babbling insanely. But then she says something interesting, that the Architect was the one who caused the latest blight. Again, the Architect shows that he's willing to be less than forthright about his decisions, and admits that he did cause it, but not intentionally. Basically, he figured that if he could free the Archdemon by awakening it with his experimentation, then it would free all of the Darkspawn in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, that only prematurely caused the Blight to start, and the architect chalked it up to a whoopsie. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess his intentions were good, but he's also completely reckless. Either way, my decision's been made, and it's time to fight.
Perhaps we will hear the song again when we die. Oh, let it come. Let it come.
Good God, what a great voice actress. So this battle is actually really tough if you're not micromanaging your people. I failed it twice before realizing I needed to stay on top of everyone's positioning, health, stamina, and so on. It was a fun battle, and those crystal circles from before, they could be useful for sure if I found myself in a pinch, but when I buckled down, I realized that I didn't need them too much. Basically, one heals the party to full and revives down people, one stuns every enemy, and one deals damage to every enemy. But overall, it's a super fun and engaging fight. When the battle draws to a close, I wind up stabbing the mother once in the titty and once in the head, effectively ending her. And then the aftermath slideshow just starts, like very abruptly. Huh, wonder if BioWare was pressed for time. So to do a brief summary, the other Wardens are outraged that I let the Architect go and tried to track him to no avail. That said, the Deep Roads became a lot quieter than usual after, so maybe he did make good on his word. Now, the really interesting bit is that burning Amaranthine was clearly the bad choice here if that wasn't abundantly clear before. The people of Ferelden regarded my guy as power-hungry, and claimed that this was a move to try to gain more influence, as the keep soon became bigger than Amaranthine with all of the trading reallocating there. Riots broke out more than once against the keep, and they were put down by the Wardens every time. Shit, dude. So what would have happened had I chose the other route? Well, the city would have obviously been saved, and they would have began trying to rebuild the keep after it gets wiped out. The citizens would have felt bad for the Wardens and tried their best to help. Additionally, if I hadn't fully upgraded the keep, everyone who I left to defend it would have died. Well, actually, I'm not sure if it was everyone. I think it's every single time I miss an upgrade, somebody dies, but I'm not entirely sure. It's still a cool outcome. It's very Mass Effect 2. But the best ending would have been to fully upgrade the keep and to help Amaranthine, as everyone would have lived, and both places would have survived overall. I like that a lot. There's loads of replayability there for sure. The underground area where another dwarven city resided was reclaimed by Orzammar. Roads were cleared and secured to it, and everything was patched up. Anders and Nathaniel stood with the Wardens. Nathaniel in particular did a lot to clear the Howe name, eventually reclaiming some land for them and getting a statue erected of himself. I mean, other people did that shit. I don't think he commissioned it or anything. Valana started viewing humans with more sincerity and even defended them from Darkspawn stragglers, which puts a nice bow on her character. I kinda wish I could have seen it happen though. Oh yeah, and then she claims that she saw her sister and disappeared for fucking ever. That's just the end of her character. She saw her sister in the distance and she followed her and now she's gone. Okay, cool. I guess we never really did get a resolution to her sister being taken captive despite all of the setup there. Weird. Anyways, Justice pursued justice, surprisingly enough. He just went out and did cool justice shit, I guess. Then he came back to the wife of the warden whose body he occupied and just fucking dropped dead in front of her. I cannot imagine the trauma that he caused. Sigrun lost all spirit when the mother died, and she just left the Legion apparently. I don't know, whatever. And Oghren continued being a warden, but couldn't act maturely at all whenever his lady and toddler visited him. So Felsi just stopped visiting, and Oghren didn't seem to care. Asshole. And finally, my warden just stopped being a warden. I didn't think that was possible, but yeah, I guess no Darkspawn equals no warden. He never even went back to the keep. I wonder why all the people thought that he raised Amaranthine for power then. With my previous decisions, my guy continued adventuring with Liliana, and that's that. Overall, Awakening is a solid, I don't know, 7 out of 10? Maybe 8? Someone tell IGN. The DLC adds a lot to the game. It's just a whole nother chapter to it. And it really accomplishes a ton in what it sets out to do in terms of the sheer amount of new stuff. There's content galore here and quite a lot of replayability. It's pretty much impossible to look at it and go, well, it doesn't really do much for the game, because it does. But that said, the writing falters quite a bit. It seemed like BioWare had a lot of ideas that they wanted to jam Awakening with. And they did do that, but it didn't seem like they fleshed out as much of it as they should have. Like when you start out, the game prompts you to fortify the keep and to get to know your companions and to really dig in and just start doing stuff. But then when you're halfway through it, the game starts to peter out in a way. Companions start to become less interesting and fleshed out. Quests seem to end abruptly. Whole setups are just stunted in terms of their outcomes. I honestly wish they'd have just taken a couple of other companions between maybe Zevran, Sten, and Liliana, and just had them show up instead of Justice and Sigrun. It would have saved a lot of focus on these superfluous bits and given the devs time to worry about carving out the other companions a bit more. But the biggest issue that I have is the overall setup. The DLC introduces itself by telling you that there are these two intelligent factions of Darkspawn which have emerged, and it sounds like you're going to have to jump between them and choose a side. That each side would present a compelling argument as to why you should help them. And while the end result isn't the worst with how much they leaned into the Architect, I think I would have preferred if the Mother was actually a lot less crazy and had a compelling side of her own. Or maybe if someone was behind her pulling the strings. And again, what they came up with wasn't horrible. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But I played through nearly the entire DLC wondering when I would get to meet the two sides proper, and when they would present their arguments, and explain how they got here. But I didn't get the full picture until the last 15 minutes of gameplay. It's just way too much time to string people along for, and I would have much rather the Architect explain himself much sooner. That way, maybe if you do side with him, he has you meet with his generals, and they all pledge to ally themselves with you when you're fighting towards the Mother. Maybe they each have a task that they want you to complete in order to gain their trust, and they'll reward you with something to earn your trust as well. It would be fun and interesting to watch those bonds form. And even if you did decide to kill the Architect, maybe those generals show up to avenge him throughout the gameplay from then on out. I don't know, it just feels weird that I was still unsure about what was going on until the final moments. And being led around by my nose for that long had me caring less overall. Either way, Awakening is obviously the best of the DLC bunch so far, and something tells me that these last two are not going to surpass it. That said, let's hit the Golems of Omgarak. So this is another standalone DLC, but it does allow you to import your Warden again, even from Awakening. The intro has Lord Dace of Orzammar writing to your guy on the recommendation of Balin. Apparently an area of the former Dwarven Kingdom was discovered which was trying to recreate Caridin's research of Golem creation. This area didn't come to fruition, and was abandoned before being